Hello and welcome to Forward Forum. I'm John Quinlan, and in just a moment we're going to be having a wonderful discussion about an exciting new project that's launching this month. Taping this on June 26, 2015. We're going to be talking about the mutual aid networks. I just wanted to invite you in the meantime to be sure to come back and watch shows that are of interest to you, to refer folks to our website at forwardforum.net, and to send us comments about your ideas for future programs, your feedback about shows that we've done. You can write to us at forwardforumshow@gmail.com. And very pleased to have in studio my guest Stephanie Rearick. Stephanie is someone who has impacted in many different realms in terms of social justice activism. She is the current co-director of the Dade County Time Bank and is also the project coordinator for the Mutual Aid Networks, which is this thing that we'll be talking about throughout the hour. Stephanie, welcome to Forward Forum.
Thank you.
And just a quick disclaimer, I am so interested in this project that in fact I'm now doing some consulting work in terms of communications related to mutual aid networks, so especially exciting. And this is exactly the kind of project that we are going to enjoy sharing with you, our audience, both locally and statewide. It's the kind of thing that involves, on a basic level, collaboration and resource sharing. Stephanie, just before we go into some of the real specific details of what's happening here, as you reflect, I guess, based on your own experience, why is it important for us not to be in silos, but to be out there doing things together?
Well, everything in our society that's valuable is based on relationships and networks, and mutual aid networks are really about redesigning our economy to take advantage of cooperation and abundance and build on those things. So everything in my life that's worked out, I'm co-owner of Mother Fool's Coffee House,
right,
for one example. So one of the many experiences that led to this, but everything about the success of Mother Fool's has been based on the kindness of neighbors and people supporting us, from the woman who sold us the business and financed it herself and gave us a great price because she wanted us to carry on her vision for the neighborhood, to our former landlord, Joe Kirch, who sold us the building under really good terms and really cooperated with us, to all the people who just have helped us out in exchange for coffee, gift certificates, things like that. And at a certain point I realized it's really obvious what we have to offer because we have a physical space and coffee, but everyone has something to offer. Everyone should have the chance to make it known what their gifts are to the world and be able to exchange them informally without having to get their hands on money.
I get the countless conversations I've had in the context of Mother Fools that have led to all kinds of other things, so that kind of makes sense. So we want to bring another hat into this, on a personal basis, but you're also you're a performer. You're someone who believes in music. We had a show on recently with Sharon Kilfoy about the intersection of arts and activism, but I imagine that's a realm in which collaboration, working together, one thing leading to another, it's got all kinds of possibilities.
It's huge, and like I said, a lot of experience have led me to this mutual aid network stuff, but being an independent musician where I want to do the music that comes out of me naturally, which I don't think is geared toward huge mainstream success, but it has value to me and to some people in the world. Same with having a small local business. Same with, I've been very active in social and environmental justice issues. But you might notice that our dominant global market economy really devalues all of those things, and really devalues, I think, most of the things that I actually value, such as people taking care of each other, people making beautiful things, being creative, engaging in their local government and local civic society, taking care of people. All those things aren't valued in our market economy. And since the economy is a social construct, how about if we reconstruct it in a way to serve our social needs? So that's what we're working on doing.
Making it people-based again and not serving some kind of larger system that really doesn't have a larger purpose for the rest of us.
Right, and I think that's something that people really forget about because we're really immersed in this economic context. But it's really important to remember a lot of places in the world are not still. A lot of places never have been. We weren't until very recently. Like, this is a very, very recent experiment in global, in mass market globalization. And we can see how it's working for most people. So it's time to retool. And that's the thing that I'm very excited to have learned is that we just can. not only can we, but we really have to. Since we have an economy that's driving our whole species and our whole planet off a cliff, and since it is a social construct, that's pretty absurd that we're allowing it to continue that way. So I'm happy to have discovered that we don't need to do that.
Well, the other piece of context, I guess, to provide is for those folks who aren't familiar with the concept, we should talk a little bit about Dane County Time Banks. This is kind of where this idea originated and where it's played out locally. Could you explain a little bit about that history and what the mission of Dane County Time Banks is?
Yeah, so going back in time to when I really was realizing that our dominant economy is the sort of missing link of what's driving everything I care about the wrong direction.
Right.
At that point, I picked up a book called The Future of Money by a man named Bernard Lietaer, who now happens to be on the Mutual Aid Network Advisory Board.
Great.
Pleased to report. But I picked up a book called The Future of Money, and it did me a great service by breaking down the functions of our economy, different tools that have been applied for different functions over the course of human history. And that's when I first realized, oh, it doesn't have to be this way. We have other options. And that's when I learned about time banking, and it really struck me. So what time banking is it's a form of mutual credit. So people, organizations, however you want to structure it, we come together in a network where we extend credit to each other. And in time banking, it's very pure because it's just in the form of time. So I join the time bank, I say what I can do for other people, I say what I need. Everyone has needs, everyone has something to give. And then every hour I spend helping another member, I get a credit for that amount of time in my account. So I teach piano lessons. So I teach an hour piano lesson, I then get an hour in my account. That person goes down 1 hour in theirs, I go up 1 hour in mine. I can then have someone come fix my computer, I can have someone help me with shopping. I can spend the hours before I earn them and back and forth. It's really about connecting people and resources and nothing more. And the hours are what money truly is, which is they just are a measure of transactions that we've made. They're a measure of the exchange of value that we've made. And everyone's time is valued equally. We don't put a price on it. And besides just connecting people and resources, it really helps shift the perspective that we have about our own value and about the value of others. And it really helps us connect with people we would never meet otherwise, all based on our strengths and interests and what we want to be doing with each other. It's a very lovely social dynamic that it creates.
Just on a personal basis, I mean, it's so exciting for me. I've known about this concept for a while. Of course, I've been too busy to get around to enrolling in it.
Yes.
But I was in New York a couple weeks ago, and we were going around the table trying to take stock of the different contributions that all of us as volunteer board members for a group called the United Nations Association. Actually, this is in Washington, but anyway, we were doing this. I was adding it up, making a rough estimate. It's probably 1,200 hours I invested in this group last year. How excited it is for me that I can bank on that, and then I can get other people to help me do video work for this TV show, or contribute, with fundraising expertise, or with basic tasks like putting together a desk, or like you said, or guitar lessons or something down the road. And that there are a lot of us out there. Our work lives are in one realm, but on the other hand, the work we do as volunteers sometimes gets discounted and underappreciated. It seems like a great way to recognize the value of that.
Think about how many times people never get into volunteering because they're not brought up that way, because they have to work 3 jobs, 3 crappy, soul-crushing jobs to make ends meet. Or how often people stop doing their art or music because they have to go work at some soul-crushing jobs. So why don't we make an economy around these kind of creative endeavors and around people's ability to be whole people? And the only barrier to that is money, but we realize we don't actually need money to create that economy. We can use time bank hours, we can use other forms of mutual credit, we can pool our money, we can build commonly owned resources. So that's what we're working on doing now. So we can really redesign our work lives and value ourselves and our communities as whole people and whole neighborhoods and whole communities.
So to come back to the mutual aid network, and Mara, if we could just put that general slide up, the Wordle that has some of the concepts that explain a little bit about what this is about. It sounds like this is a bit of an evolution. That as you had explained to me, there are 20 years or more of kind of ground building that has gone into this. But this is the natural next step. That not only are we kind of again keeping track of the hours and banking on that, but we're finding more ways that we can collaborate. Many nonprofits either have no staff or small staffs, and very often we find ourselves working side by side too often in parallel with groups that have very similar missions. So it sounds like in many ways this is a way for us to share resources, ideas, to instead of working on parallel strands, to bring those threads together in collaboration.
Absolutely, and not only are we often working side by side in different silos, working with similar goals, but we're often forced to compete with each other for money. And a lot of times we say scarce resources, but now I'm trying to name it scarce money. Money is the resource that's scarce, because when we're talking about everything else, like people's ability to take care of each other and be creative and do all this work, that's not scarce.
Right.
So that's artificially scarce, and that's what we're working to get around. And one of the things I like to say is, why are we fighting for crumbs when we know how to make pie?
Yeah.
So we're going to get together and make pie. And I'm glad that you brought up the idea of the different organizations, because one of our very likely mutual aid network pilot sites in Madison, Wisconsin is the Social Justice Center,
Yes.
where the Time Bank office is located. And so right now we're exploring how the different organizations that are housed there and then other supporters can come together and become a mutual aid network cooperative. So a mutual aid network is a new kind of legal financial structure and social structure.
And just a brief, I was the president of the Wisconsin Community Fund when the Social Justice Center came into being, one of the 4 kind of anchor groups that were part of that. And just an exciting concept, because it meant that the nonprofits actually owned the building. This was the old Willie Street Co-op building, and found a way to negotiate a successful sale. And then there's an incubator space where all kinds of new organizations, suddenly had the resources. But again, it was, capitalism instills in this notion that competition and almost Darwinistic theory of survival of the fittest is the strategy we should be employing. But that doesn't make sense when we can work together.
Yeah, and if we look at all of nature, we realize it really doesn't make sense.
Right.
Like every living system is based on cooperation, symbiosis. So we're just gonna get back in line with how humans are meant to operate. And again, you can look all around you for evidence that we are not intended to be isolated, competitive creatures, and it's quite destructive to our society. So yeah, we're just looking to take the Social Justice Center vision to another level. So we're going to explore how we make a mutual aid network. So that's a cooperative. We come together around a common purpose, and then we use time banking and shared resources, other kinds of mutual credit, but also cooperatively managed money to meet all of our needs. So we will experiment with creating a pool of money that can support the administration of the organizations, support refinancing the building perhaps, cutting down on interest payments, things like that, and getting creative with how we use these shared resources, but not so creative because we're basing it on things that tons of people have been doing for a really long time. So, and it's exactly what you're saying. We're just breaking down the silos now. We're just connecting these different threads. So each of the models that we're connecting is tried and true, but each has run up against the limitations of its own sole thing. So we really believe that by connecting these different pieces and collaborating together, we can all raise everybody's efforts up a lot very quickly.
There's countless metaphors that come to mind, but you alluded to this, but connecting the dots seems to be so essential. In the United Nations Association, I think we ran into about 10 or 12 groups that are all working in East Africa on AIDS projects or microeconomic development. They all have very similar missions, and they don't know about each other.
Yeah.
But we're beginning to, plant the seeds for the idea that again, it's not a matter of dividing up a pie into smaller pieces. It's a matter of building a bigger pie together, making a bigger pie.
Yeah. Yeah, I make more pies, lots of different flavors. So, and actually, since you mentioned that, I mentioned how a mutual aid network works. You form one around a common purpose. It can be any size. So, Social Justice Center will be our neighborhood, but I'm looking to create a travel and culture exchange that's global. We can have one about a watershed or food shed, but then we're connecting them all and our supporters in a large cooperative called the Main Man, which is actually the women is the first mutual aid network. So it's incorporated in Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Mutual Aid Network Cooperative. But the membership is global, and it's a way that the projects and supporters can support each other, share everything we're doing, and use these resource exchange and sharing mechanisms to support each other. So we're just launching that right now, and you can actually join now. And then we have a real formal launch in August, where it's really going to be open up huge to the public.
So again, for those of you who are watching this feature date, again, we're taping on June 26, 2015. Significance of this month is that after many months of preparation and people from all over the country and all over the world who've really laid the groundwork for this. This is the launch time. It's a time when you're inviting folks in to be members. What does it mean to be a member of the mutual aid network?
Yeah, so when you join, you're joining the main mutual aid network, and you pay some dues based on what your means afford. And if you have a project that's along these lines and these core principles, then you can set up a project account. We're using some brand new software that's project management software, and also establishes a marketplace of resource sharing and exchange among the projects and among supporters of projects. And people now who join will be sharing what their projects are doing, will be creating materials together, will be creating the shape of the software, for example, instructional materials, step-by-step guides for setting up mutual aid networks. So it's really the people who are really committed to a cooperative economic vision joining right now and really helping to shape it. Then in August, we're bringing a lot of people from around the world to Madison, Wisconsin, and we're having a Man Up Summit. So one reason we call it Mutual Aid Networks is it's man for short, and we really like the idea of you create your dream job working for the man, and we can buy out the man, we can divest from Wall Street and invest in our mutual aid networks in our communities, buy out the man. So I'm very interested in co-opting the man. And then Man Up. So we have our Man Up Summit in August 20th to 28th, roughly. And people from around the world are going to come and we'll learn together. So we're going to do deep training in sociocracy, deeply inclusive decision making, learn more about nonviolent communication, restorative justice. Someone's coming from Sweden who's been working with the JAK cooperative bank there, and he's going to teach us how they work, what their policies are. He's creating some new models for financing for permaculture projects. So we'll get together and collectively figure out how we launch some of our new cooperative saving and investment pools. So all this stuff's going to happen, and then we'll have a big public launch of mutual aid networks. And we'll have people from Nigeria and UK and Sweden, and then Detroit, St. Louis, any place around the country that people want to come and engage and really learn together and collaborate.
It reminds me a lot of Dr. King's vision. People forget that it was a vision that was grounded in this country, but it was also linked to Gandhian principles in India, and had applications in Africa and Asia and South America, all over the world. And so it kind of makes sense that a project like this isn't just Madison, Wisconsin based. It goes far beyond that.
We have a very explicit vision about it. And number one, we had initially decided we want to start with at least 6 pilot sites around the world, partly to just play around with the idea of 6 degrees of separation and how quickly can we make this flow by explicitly aiming to network ourselves together and then expand out into other natural networks that we have. So that's part of our vision. But our goal is very explicitly, and we really mean this, it sounds quite ambitious, but we mean it. Our goal is that every human on the planet could be connected with a mutual aid network that is connected with mutual aid networks that connect them with every other human being on the planet. We really, really intend to create a situation where you never ever have a mutual aid network that has an incentive to outsource cheap labor to Bangladesh. Your incentive will be to Skillshare with people in Bangladesh to be sure that the things are being produced how they need to be produced and that people are cared for the way they need to be cared for. So that's the point, is really create a real solidarity economy that aims for solidarity among all human beings, and I mean the 100%. And I just want to make that really clear. We're looking to create something that engages the 100%, and also, and we can talk about the mechanics a bit, but create an opportunity for us to redistribute wealth voluntarily in ways that we see fit, in ways that we deem fair. I know that many, many people with means really see a need to redistribute wealth. So my question is, what are we waiting for? Do we want someone to mandate this for us? I don't think so. I think there are ways that we can choose to move forward on this where we don't need our governments to do it for us. We don't need the bankers to change their system. We do it smarter, and we do it together.
There's an irony here, because I think the folks that have opposed things that they deem as socialism or they place some other label on, again, they're caught up in this competitive, coercive dynamic. And so
false binaries.
Right.
Also, it's not capitalism or socialism, and this isn't any of these things. I mean, this is all the tools in service to humans. So we're not in a rigid ideology of any sort. We're not picking one thing over another. We're assimilating the things we need to have the communities we want. And to me, that's really the only reasonable goal.
And so you're anticipating, what I was going to introduce is just, it is a different model. And because it is collaborative, one of the things that's exciting for me is we're going to be talking about internet webinars and all kinds of other things. And kind of what's built into that is the interactive aspect. We're not just preaching at someone saying, hey, we've discovered something and you all should get on board. We're saying, help us to create it.
Mm-hmm. And it's being created by people all over the world already. And And it really is just about connecting them. So when we talk about, well, mutual aid networks are making this thing and this thing and this thing, we're not talking about 3 or 4 people here in Madison, Wisconsin making it. We're talking about everyone who's choosing to partner with us, sharing what they've already made. Because I really think a lot of what we need already exists. It's just a matter of finding out who's out there, who's done what, and connecting us so we find each other.
And it's not something amorphous. I think people misunderstood the Occupy movement. They thought, well, it's just so chaos driven. It's driven by without any sense of organization or a framework or a focus. But anyway, I don't think that was true of the Occupy movement. But I think what you're talking about is the best of a facilitative style of leadership. It's finding out what's out there, trying to put it into a place where people can understand it and grasp it, can embrace it, and then can have it grow based on what they want moving forward.
Yes, exactly. And I can't stress enough, it's really intended to, some of it is intended to separate somewhat cooperation from total togetherness and agreement. Like we don't have to all work together, and we shouldn't all work together.
Yep.
People have different goals, and that's fine. So this is really has autonomy built in, and I'm serious when I say you can organize one for any purpose, as long as it fits core principles, which are essentially kind of boiled down to the golden rule, but also it's just really based on principles of cooperative principles and time banking and commons governance principles. But really doing it so you can do the exact thing you want to do with your life is a very great reason to be part of a mutual aid network and to form one.
And I appreciate the fact that I think a lot of learning has gone into this, a lot of based on experience, because there are collective models that sometimes, unfortunately, kind of serve everybody poorly equally. They are, because there isn't necessarily accountability, there isn't focus, there isn't a frame for things, and it's just sort of like everybody got to do what they want to, and that's not what you're talking about.
Yeah, we're really aiming to build in really good governance and modeling these things. So mutual aid networks do not intend to be really prescriptive or proscriptive. We really want really free-flowing experimentation and sharing, again, within core principles. But we want people to experiment with a lot of different decision-making processes and a lot of different ways of including people in governance, and share that so we know what's working and what doesn't, and to diminish the fear of risking failure. Go ahead and try new things. If we want to create a new society, we have to take some risks, and it's worth taking these risks at this point. And so we really are creating a culture of really respecting that, encouraging it, and having people share when they take a risk and it results in what they perceive as a failure, because it's a success for everybody else because we get to learn from it.
So I want to go into some of these specific precepts and give people a sense. There's also, in just a moment, we'll show a graphic that describes kind of a gear structure, a way that all different aspects of this can intersect, different approaches can be taken. Just in case you are just joining us, I just want to reintroduce the show. Again, this is Forward Forum, and we're going to be talking through the rest of the hour about the Mutual Aid Network. And the project coordinator, Stephanie Rearick, is here to provide some insights into all this. You're seeing this flashed at the bottom of your screen throughout the hour, but mutualaidnetwork.org is a website where you can get basic information. It's a site that's evolving and providing more examples of how this works in action. But I want to turn to the website for just a minute, because I think it gives us, again, a bit of a framework for understanding how some of this works in practice. And Mara, if we could bring up slide 1 in terms of why join the Mutual Aid Network. And what that slide illustrates is it says we are creating a legal, social, and financial framework to help people redesign their work lives, partially by creating more comprehensive and resilient kinds of resource sharing and exchange. I know we've alluded to so many of these things as we've already been talking, but let's break this down a little bit. So creating a legal, social, and financial framework. One of the challenges of people who have a good idea sometimes is establishing that framework and understanding how you put it together, how you honor 501c3 guidelines that are set out as a nonprofit. How do you raise the money? That's something people are sometimes reticent to do. They're afraid to ask for money. So it sounds like a lot of this is helping people put into that. I guess I don't want to also miss the social part. That it's also about relationship building, creating a broad base for your work, and reaching out to the people that are involved. So let's break it down. For starters, though, legal aspects of all of this.
So the legal framework really for us is experimenting with the cooperative legal structure.
Okay.
So again, mutual aid networks were born out of sort of a research and development project out of the Dane County Time Bank, because the Time Bank here works beautifully in a number of ways, and it has limitations. For example, when we need money, it's a harder fit at different times. So we've created a nonprofit organization. With that, we've created the need to get subsidy to administer that. And we feel that that the nonprofit structure tends to promote mission creep in a lot of organizations, because it's kind of naturally selects for people who are good at capturing subsidy and doing the administration a lot of times.
Yeah.
So we felt that a cooperative structure where you come together around your common purpose, and that's the governance, that's who are the members, one member, one vote. And then there's a lot of transparency, and that group then stewards time banking, stewards possibly cooperatively managed money if they choose to, stewards like other forms of mutual credit and shared resources. But so it just creates the legal and social agreements around those resources, helps you create a commons that you commonly own legally, whether it's a project, whether it's a physical location, whether it's gardens that you're planting, you all have a legal say in that. Then the social framework is partly that, and partly the principles that come with organizing it as a cooperative. But we also are going to bring in a lot more modeling and training and technical assistance about project facilitation. So we take a lot of cues from Art of Hosting and the Berkana Institute. I read a book called Walk Out, Walk On, again by another member of our advisory board, Deborah Fries and Meg Wheatley. Deborah Fries is our advisory board member. But that book really inspired us because it's about a lot of different projects and different locations where people came together and accomplished amazing things without money, did it sort of in a game context, but then they connected across their communities in a network of trans-local learning so they could really share what they were doing. So we're bringing in a lot of the principles from Art of Hosting and Berkana Institute, and some of the people, including Bayo from Nigeria and Deborah from Boston, who will come and help us with that, and really learn how we take that forward, not only help communities get the skills to come together, establish common goals, establish steps toward achieving those goals. Then we pull in the other time banking and shared money and other shared resources to compensate people for achieving those goals. See how this is starting to build into its own little economy around those goals, and then can sort of develop nodes off it, because you can invite people in to help you meet those goals. I could, for example, you're not part of our mutual aid network yet, but I could use your video skills. So I'll ask you to come and make video for us, and we don't have money to pay you. We can compensate you in these ways. If you join our mutual aid network, then you might find other ways to engage. So that's how we start engaging people socially, legally. You can then join and be a member owner. So those are the big pieces of that right now. Then other pieces are bringing in some tools to help people redesign their work lives, understand how you would like to spend your time, what ways you can be compensated for different ways that you serve your community.
Yeah, and some of our partners in this, folks like Chris Pettit and Bruce Moffett and I think are all enthusiastic from an individual perspective about what that opens up for us, because we aren't necessarily going to work for the man anymore. We want to be able to organize our work lives, and we want our work lives to to resonate with our beliefs and the other things that we work on. So this is really a chance to kind of think outside the box, create our own boxes.
Yeah, and ever since the 90s, when I first started hearing politicians talk about the economy of the 21st century, I always wondered what they had in mind.
Yeah.
It turns out they didn't have anything in mind except weapons. I mean, the economy of the 21st century, as it's being dreamed up by our political leaders, is looking very bleak. And a lot of, so again, this isn't brand new. None of these concepts are brand new. We're just synthesizing it in a new way, but other people around the world have also come to the same conclusions about how to synthesize it, so I want to honor that. Someone in Romania showed me the same vision. Someone in the UK has joined up with us now. Someone from Egypt has laid out the same vision. So we're all coming to similar conclusions, which makes it feel like the right thing. But I'm really way more excited about this vision for the 21st century economy, and we have to make it before the other one wins out.
You mentioned earlier about this notion of false dualities. I think one of the false dualities is that nonprofits, and we are talking about a nonprofit versus a for-profit vision here, they can still have a strong business sense in the best sense of thinking forward, planning well, structuring things in a way that makes sure that you're never in question about whether you're going to be able to pay your employees, other basic things. So that kind of makes sense. But as you were talking earlier, there's a term I've always embraced: social entrepreneurship, because we that 21st century paradigm of a new way of looking at things. I think entrepreneurship, and unfortunately, I think the term has been misused sometimes because it's been used to plug into old constructs. It really opens up the world because it involves creativity and innovation, and individual expression. Toward a common good. I mean, it's all these wonderful things that are all kind of rolled up together. Does social entrepreneurship, does that make sense?
Yeah, very much. And actually, I just had an opportunity to present at a conference of Business Alliance for Local Living Economies.
Yeah.
And part of that was, there was some focus on social entrepreneurship and how to connect it with serious community struggles. So again, this is another aspect of the mutual aid networks, is it really is about connecting a lot of people who have really well-developed strengths in areas that can meet each other's sort of limitations and build on each other. So social entrepreneurs really understand how to make some things happen, tend to be in sort of more privileged classes and more privileged communities for all kinds of very understandable reasons, would like often to connect with serious social justice struggles and don't often have an avenue for that. The serious social justice struggle people really know what's going on and know how to do a lot of things, and often really are excellent at being very creative with resource sharing and exchange because they've had to be. Then we have freelancers who are great at putting together a different kind of work life, and we have the bankers and corporate people who've been good at massing resources and developing different kinds of security. And every single one of those people in every single one of those categories is a whole person and would likely like to be connected more with the world as a whole person. So we're just really working on creating explicitly the avenue to do that and really desegregate different economic tools and sectors. Like with time banking, it's super powerful, very good for catalyzing, rewarding really abundant work. But in time banking, it has to be separate enough from the market economy that we can't use it in the heart of a business that's appropriate for time banking. So, but we do have people who mainly have access to time bank hours need stuff. So we do have some time bank stores where people can access donated goods for their time bank hours, but we want to make sure we don't create a situation where it's like a second tier economy. So we want people who mainly have access to time bank hours be able to access new stuff when they need it, access money if they have healthcare expenses, which they shouldn't need money for, but that's a different topic. But all those different things. So in the mutual aid network context, there are aspects that I probably just can't get into right now, but there are aspects of cooperative law and policy that can help us make those exchanges. So if someone's able to earn mostly time bank hours, we can have social and legal agreements that help people access their monetary needs within that mutual aid network context from that cooperatively managed pool of money that you develop together.
And again, it needs to be punctuated that this is not something that someone is going to be excluded because they don't happen to have a lot of resources at this point in their lives or whatever. But I want to come back just briefly again. There's this false duality I guess I was trying to hit upon. This just struck me when the city of Madison recently was the first place to add homelessness to the list of protected classes. I was on the Equal Opportunities Commission. One of the ways we did that is we brought the business community in, because business folks don't want to necessarily be seen as the folks who are saying, let's clear these people off the streets and get rid of them. There really have been genuine efforts to maybe understand that, but for the grace of God, go I, this could be any of us. And so we brought Susan Schmitz onto the Equal Opportunities Committee, who's part of downtown Madison. And when the bill went before the city council, it wasn't a matter of business interests on one side and other folks. It was everybody saying this is what's best for everyone. But the other thread off of this, talk about a landmark book. Robin Hood Was Right was a book by Pam Rogers and Chuck Collins of United for a Fair Economy. Came out about 15 years ago when I was at Wisconsin Community Fund. Carolyn Gantner, good North Sider like us, and I, we coordinated the publicity campaign for the state, which turned out to be the best run one, they told us, which is great. But part of the reason that was true is in a place like Wisconsin Rapids, where Carolyn is from, we were able to talk to small businesses and to talk to editorial boards who are grounded more in that small business ethos about the fact that the idea of spreading the wealth around, of doing good work in your community, if you're privileged enough to have inherited wealth or to have earned through your business, resources, you realize that came because other people helped get you there, and so now is the time to pay it forward. So the whole notion of business being on one side of the spectrum and the rest of us who are good grassroots activists on the other side doesn't make sense. Let's bring us all together.
Right.
So anyway, it just sounds like a lot of bridge building, a lot of, instead of seeing us in separate silos, separate spaces, is really what's behind a lot of this. Let's wander a little further into the website to slide 2, if we could, Mara. And again, in terms of joining the mutual aid network, we've touched on a lot of this, but people make a mutual aid network cooperative for any purpose. Could be to feed everyone on the block, could be a global travel, cultural exchange, regional watershed restoration, group of friends wanting a work redesign, whatever. We help each other make and use both the sharing and exchange tools and the social legal processes for collectively stewarding projects and resources. Since you've already touched on some of these things, I want to move us immediately, Mara, into that last slide for Wellness Weavers. Maybe it's just a case in point that kind of brings out some of these aspects. This is a project that is featured on the website, and it's out of small town in Kansas, and Helen Weaver, who's one of the founders of it, has this great testimonial for Mutual Aid Network. She says, finding the main man totally validated my Wellness Weavers vision, allowed me to put my gear into service without reinventing the wheel. In looking at her website this morning, in essence, I think a lot of this is about, it's resonant with the consumer mental health movement. It's a lot of places that are basically saying, if you're struggling, you're facing life challenges, part of the way to address those challenges is to engage with other people who face similar challenges. Could you talk a little about, as it applies, this whole concept of mutual aid network as applies to a group like Wellness Weavers?
Yeah. So I love Wellness Weavers, and she's calling it the Wellness-Oriented Mutual Aid Network, or the woman.
Right.
She wants to be sure the woman is represented right there. And I will say, just as an aside, the main man is actually the women too, the Wisconsin Mutual Aid Network.
Yeah.
And it is mainly women who, really, most time banks are 70% women. A lot have been formed and led by women, which makes sense because if you look at the exploited labor over human history, women's work tends to be a big segment of exploited labor, and time banking is very good at rewarding what's been traditionally called women's work. But anyhow, so the Wellness-Oriented Mutual Aid Network in Kansas is great. Helen works as a humor therapist, and she's very engaged in a lot of different complementary therapies, and realizes, like many people who work in wellness and healing, social isolation is one of the biggest determinants of poor health. Social isolation is a huge thing, and just giving people the chance to engage with other people is extremely beneficial. So I can speak more to our local experience just because I haven't been to visit Kansas yet and see Helen's project. But locally, we have a wellness project and also a medical transportation project And it connects people to complementary care, and we do a monthly meal and workshop. And so it provides people with some avenues for getting their health needs met, but at the same time, it connects them with other people in ways that they can meet ancillary needs, including their needs to just socialize with people.
Yeah.
And there's another, in the UK, there's a time bank that's based in a clinic. And the doctor there prescribes people to go participate in the time bank, because a lot of people come into the doctor and really the root cause is that they're depressed and isolated. So he just prescribes people right to work with the time bank. But the woman in Kansas, as well as some of our pilot projects in Pennsylvania, are geared toward applying all these kind of resource sharing and exchange mechanisms and cooperative ownership to comprehensive health and wellness services. So people will be able to obtain a lot of support, whether you need to be listened to, whether you need a massage or craniosacral therapy or a clinical visit, or whether you need access to some healthy food or some respite, would provide all of those resources in a center that people can access through whatever means they have available to them.
So 2 points off of this, and then we do want to get to the gears, kind of the nitty gritty of some of this. But one is life and balance strikes me as a theme that weaves its way through everything we're talking about. And I was at a workshop about a month and a half ago on Hancock Street. I'm trying to remember the name of the organization is behind it. But the whole theme of that day was to understand that those of us in nonprofit settings that are working on these important causes, there's such an urgency about it and such a waning of resources. We think we have to somehow take the 80 hours we're putting in and double those things.
Yeah.
We have to pour more and more of ourselves into it. And I think the realization of that day is, but we also have to be willing to give back to ourselves. We have to acknowledge ourselves and each other. We have to take good care of ourselves, otherwise we don't have what it takes to be able to embark on these important causes.
And we have the absurd situation right now where we have some people working insane amounts trying to get everything done, and a lot of people out of work at the same time. And it's another way the mutual aid network attempts to integrate the economies better and integrate our just integrate how we structure ourselves and how we structure our work, and be able to give people an opportunity to maybe split that up without the employers having to do it.
Right.
And maybe that's a good time to get into some mechanics.
We will in just a second.
Yeah.
One other thing, Mara, if we could go back to the slide from the wellness group, just briefly, to show the picture. I believe this is Helen, who is in this picture in front of this image of Amelia Earhart, and she's dressed up to recreate this. But one of the other things I discovered at her website was, I think, she's saying the important work, of course, has to happen in the here and now. Where I'm going with this is the woman aspect of this, because ironically we are employing man up and man phrases and everything, but in kind of an ironic way. But one of the beautiful things I think she brings out is one of the things Amelia Earhart was able to do was tour the country and to inspire others. There was this groundbreaking woman who was doing things that women hadn't done before, hadn't been allowed to do before, and how powerful that was. But she also talked about, relevant to her work, remembering Jane Addams appearing at Union Station in Chicago and reaching out to the first homeless person she came to and making sure that they were hooked up with the resources they need. They knew that they weren't out there alone. I think that women in our society have a gift we prevented them from doing, because very often a womanly way of doing things, for lack of a better description, doesn't fit into that, competitive, vision that unfortunately has been the norm for so long. So there is a special aspect of this, I think, that women bring to this work.
I'm glad that you said that, and it is kind of funny to me to be in a situation where I do answer for calling the thing the man, because it was really my choice to do it, because I am somewhat obsessed with the gender politics. And I do feel that the last 5,000 years have been a very explicit, intentional killing of the whole, whatever we want to say, perceived feminine, however we want to describe that, of everything in life. And I think it's extremely damaging to women and men. And when I say man up by joining the women, originally we were just going to call it the women, but the main man just so suits what the thing is. But man up by joining the women, I mean that. I think men and women can man up. I think men need to man up by reconnecting. We need to reconnect the masculine and feminine, and the masculine yin and yang, and the feminine yin and yang, and realize again, it's not. I also think that's a false binary.
Right.
So in a way, it's kind of weird for me to play so much with the gender stuff, because I do think that's a false binary, and I think I really want to get away from binary genders, and I think that our society is going that way. But in the meantime, we're saying man up by joining the women, and joining the women in practice, in process, and all of us becoming whole people. All of us becoming whole people.
And just the last thought on this is for younger generations. I'm taking a women's studies class 4 years ago. I realized it really isn't so much about labels or boxes. It meant something for me to come out as a gay man back when, but in some ways it is more about gender and really pushing the boundaries of gender nonconformity and not fitting into boxes, as you said. And the ironic thing, I think I told you, my initial reaction when I heard man up and things like that is just kind of wondering where exactly we were going with this. But since I'm going to be working with you on communication stuff, it's actually, I think, a great way to open a dialogue and exactly what you're talking about. To say, let's not be thinking in boxes. And we're using irony, we're using humor, we're using other ways to open up that dialogue. So I think that's a powerful thing. So having said that, let's move into the gears here that kind of make things run. I think we've got about roughly 10 or 15 minutes here. We'll try to touch on some of these. But essentially, the way this dialogue, this is by the way on color, even though we're seeing it on a black and white monitor right now. But the 4 black gears at each of the compass points are kind of fundamental to this. So why don't we start with the top one? We've touched on this some of time sharing and work our way around, and then we'll get to the other gears in a moment.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, time banking is mutual credit. We essentially just exchange credits for the exact amount of time we spend helping each other, and that marks the transactions that happen. So it's exactly as abundant as you need it to be. If you need some work done, you just go minus in your account the exact many hours of work that you need, and you earn it back later. I'm
going to stop us there. We'll try to just keep these explanations relatively concise. We can fill in the blanks later, or encourage people again to come to that website, which is Mutual Aid Network, or the Dane County Time Bank site is?
Yeah, DaneCountyTimeBank.org.
Okay, so those are places you can find out more. To keep going around the clock here, price-based mutual credit, how does that figure in?
So time banking is great for things that are totally abundant. We don't put a price on it. It's all valued equally. Price-based mutual credit operates virtually the same way, but you have a dollar amount on it. So it's good in businesses. So for example, my coffee house can buy a cooler from your business that's part of the network for $1,000 worth of credits. So I give you the credits in your accounts. I owe that back in goods and services to other members of the network, but we pay the taxes on it as though it was a cash exchange. So we stay nice and clean and legal with the IRS, and we don't get time banking mixed up with pricing, but we have more liquidity, so it supports local businesses and helps ameliorate the disadvantage you're at as a local business. Gives you more liquidity, but it's still competitive. You still price things. You still pay the taxes.
Okay. A community saving, lending, and investing.
And this is what we based on the JAK Cooperative Bank in Sweden, but there's also Mission Asset Fund in San Francisco, giving and lending circles. Very simple level. People can choose to put their savings in a pool. You save a certain amount of time, you're eligible for a no-interest loan, or you could get a grant for your work or for a project. And that's what the cooperative that runs that pool determines the policies for that. We can also create a situation where people invest right in a community. So a donor can give money right to a neighborhood mutual aid network and know that group has the tools they need to identify the work that they want to be done, to compensate each other to do it, and to bring in outside people when they want to and when they choose to.
And then the last of the 4 major ones is sharing.
And sharing we put in here because we realize that a lot of when we talk about alternative economic mechanisms and complementary currencies, we're transacting so much and we're assuming individual private ownership, and we need to start really creating more of a commons and really really understand that sharing is best. If we so shared resources can be really simple, like you have tubs of baby clothes that everyone can access when they have a baby that's that size, or a tool library, slightly less simple, or more complicated, like a maker space, like our maker space of Sector 67 here. So areas where you have shared equipment and you can build shared resources together.
Okay. And just to give folks another frame of reference again, if you go to the mutualaidnetwork.org site and you go to this diagram of these gears, if you put your cursor over any of the individual ones, there'll be some bullet points that kind of just explain what these different concepts are.
And soon we'll have tons of resources for each one so you can learn how to build your own.
All a work in progress and building as we go along here. So let's go to the kind of the outer tier, the smaller gears that intersect with these major gears. So to start with, the upper right-hand corner, robust budgeting.
So these gears are the processes that help those tools turn into something real for people and projects. So robust budgeting, we simply mean making very explicit budgets for people or projects that show what your real needs are. So it might be energy, housing, childcare, leisure, entertainment, travel, investment in the future, like very explicit things. And then your money line, what's that cost you now? But a budget that takes that over the course of 3 years and shows how you can reduce the money line by building up these other supports. Maybe your childcare line goes down because you're building up a very robust neighborhood time bank childcare network. Your energy line might go down participating in a conservation effort. Then it might turn into an income stream because you create a solar co-op and start generating income. So just really helping people develop a budget that doesn't have money as its only resource, and just get explicit for people about how these things can really meet your needs.
Okay. And then going around to the lower right, project facilitation assistance.
So I mentioned some of this earlier when I was talking about Deborah Free's Walk Out, Walk On, Art of Hosting, and Berkana Institute, and essentially just providing people the tools they need and technical assistance, so it could be other people from other mutual aid networks. So you know how you bring your group together, whoever it is in your community, and you identify your goals, and you identify how you want to work toward them, and you get that work taken care of, however you choose to do it, commissioning from people outside your group, commissioning people from inside the group, just helping people know how to realize their vision.
Okay. And at lower left, the community investment assistance.
So that would be helping people understand how you create one of these community saving, lending, and investment pools and how you interact with it. So we are going to create a lot of different template agreements for different types of purposes that people can use, but also work on the social processes, on the governance mechanisms, because of course, when you bring money into something, things are going to get trickier and things are likely to be more tense with people because it is still scarce. So we want to have very good policies for governance and agreements about how you manage that and how you bring money into it.
All of this very daunting for people, but again, the key is there's information out there, there's ways we can learn from each other.
We hold each other's hands. That's the whole point. Yeah, I haven't done it before. I'm terrified of it. So I'm looking forward to some kind of hold our hands.
There's a great quote that was applied to Shirley Chisholm, Octavia Butler, a science fiction writer, civil rights activist. She said, it's not so much a matter of when we define somebody as fearless, that they don't have fear. It's just that they move ahead despite the fear.
Feel the fear and do it anyway.
That's
I think
right.
That's a book title or something.
So the last we want to touch on is at the upper left. It's work redesign assistance.
And again, this is just to really help people see their way to being whole people. And just realizing how much we grow up in this society having the creativity drilled out of us. We're told what to do at school. We're told what to do in college. We're told what to do at our job. And so really just helping people get back to a point where they are free to dream of what they want to do and help people just identify, maybe you love your professional work and you love to use that skill, but maybe you'd like to do it for 20 hours a week instead of 40.
Yeah.
And then help people see, so what else would you like to do? How would you like to serve your neighborhood? Do you have family members or neighbors with disabilities who could use care? Is there some infrastructure in your neighborhood you can help create? How do you want to apply your creativity? And help people then see what resources you can bring in for each of those things and how to make it meet your needs.
So one more general question, and then I think we'll come back again in our final minutes here to how people can become involved. But as you're talking about this notion of maybe we should do it, something we care about, but only do it for 20 hours a week, or do it in a different time of our lives when we also want to be able to explore the world and do other things. I know that that's something that you're very interested in doing right now. This life and balance idea, but it strikes me that very often our country, which likes to see itself as exceptional and way ahead of the game, is way behind the game in terms of the options we provide for people. So as you travel in Europe or throughout the world, are there lessons we can learn from other places?
Yes, absolutely. Number one is it's a choice.
Yeah.
Number one is what we are doing here is a choice. And even just seeing some basic things like health expenses are covered in most other developed countries. Just knowing people and sharing stories about how things operate in different places. I just had the opportunity to go to Vienna, where the government pays the rent for art studios and galleries, so they don't have to make money at everything they do. And the dynamic that creates is so different. And then I've had a beautiful opportunity to spend time at these gift economy. It's called Giftival, so it's a gathering of people from around the world who want this to go this way. And people from Palestine and India, Egypt, different countries in Africa, and to realize how intact some of these gift economies really are, and that we can really learn from people doing it right now. And also realizing, though, I met a wonderful woman from Zimbabwe who was saying that the people in her community have really absorbed sort of Western media messages and feel like they really need to get their hands on money. And it is starting to fragment the gift economy more. And she was very excited to take back to them that we're all trying to get back to what they have. So, and that's another beautiful opportunity that the internet brings and that mobility brings, is we can connect to really learn what's going on with each other, and we can communicate and we can get across those sort of mainstream media messages and really connect with people as people and realize that we're all really aiming for the same thing. And once we realize that, we've as good as one.
Well, we're talking about embracing values that are true throughout the global community, but this is basically, if you want to look at it again, remove the false dichotomies and everything else. This is very traditional American way of doing things.
Yes.
This is the way things were done 100 years ago, when my great-grandma was making it as a single mom and was taking in sewing and running the switchboard and doing things for other people who would do things for her. That's really what kind of got this country going. And it was because people from around the world brought those traditions here. So.
And it appeals to people on all parts of the political spectrum, too.
Yeah.
It appeals very much to self-sufficiency and very much to community intactness, very much to not relying on government to meet all our needs. I think we should be able to rely on them to meet more of our needs, but they have been unreliable, and it's more secure to rely on our neighbors. I do want to mention, because I forgot to say it out loud, the mission of the Maine Mutual Aid Network, just because I like it, it's very straightforward. The mission is to create means for everyone to discover and succeed in work they want to do with the support of their community.
So mutualaidnetwork.org is a website. Again, there'll be more and more information there as we go along. We're doing webinars that people can find out about. We can find ways to tie them in that way. There's a real-world connection that's going to happen at the end of August.
Yes.
Could you elaborate briefly on that?
Yes, we're bringing people from around the world for the Man Up Summit, August 20th to 28th here in Madison. So we will have visitors from Sweden teaching us how to set up our cooperative saving and investment accounts, the UK teaching us in depth about sociocracy, Detroit and St. Louis and Madison, people talking about how we collaborate on community justice efforts that can really provide the creative destruction of the prison industrial complex here. We will have a wonderful visitor from Nigeria. We're inviting a bunch of our illustrious advisory board members. So August 20th to 28th, and we will be learning, collaborating. We'll do a big public launch of this. Our software programmers are coming from France to work with us to really make it serve our needs. So it's going to be a really good time for people to really immerse themselves. Oh yes, and we're also going to create a Man Up simulation game.
Okay.
So we can practice practice, what this feels like and how we actually do it in real life, and just really get our feet wet.
This will be the first, I'm sure, of many discussions we're going to be having about this. We're going to try to bring in more real-world examples, other things down the road. So please do keep tuning in to Forward Forum. Stephanie Rearick, again, is the coordinator of the Mutual Aid Network, a new project that's getting going now. Mutual Aid Networks, Mutual Aid Network, and thesingular.org is the website where you can find out more. Again, this has been Forward Forum. I'm John Quinlan. Forwardforum.net is a place where you can see our past shows, including this one. And you can write to us at forwardforumshow@gmail.com or contact us either via email or by phone here at the Sun Prairie Media Center. Thanks very much for joining us, and have a great week.